Fixtures list for Super Rugby Aotearoa 2021 is out. Not long before I left work as well, I saw the Aussie list for Super Rugby AU was out too, but I haven't had a chance to have a look at that one yet. If you are happy to look at the fixtures, there they are. The competition starts February next year, end of February. February 26th is the first round. And there's one major change this year next year, that there's going to be a final. I think if there's one thing we maybe learned from Super Rugby AU is that having a final is still preferable to a top of the log job, because for a few teams, essentially there was nothing to play for. And by the last round, essentially the Crusaders had already got it wrapped up. So I think they had sold out Eden Park for that last game, even though it ended up not getting played because of COVID cases back here in New Zealand. But yeah, having a final I think will add at least a little bit of tension, especially for teams who are hopefully within a stone's throw of second, if not first, by that last round. So yeah, there's no break. There's no bye weeks. Each team gets 2 byes, because there's 5 teams, so every week you need to have somebody on the bye. Most of the kickoff times are 7:05 here in New Zealand, which will make it kind of like 5-something in Australia. Morning games over in Europe and South Africa, but nothing too heinous, although I think there are about 4 games which are afternoon games, which will make it difficult if you're in the European, South African kind of time zone. But yeah, we'll see how things go. In terms of the actual teams, each of their fixtures lists has kind of got some pros and cons. The Blues one, I'm not a huge fan of, but I always tend to moan about the Blues getting shafted by the fixtures list. Hurricanes away is a tough way to start the season, followed up by a bye, which is either the worst or the second worst spot to have the bye. The worst one is maybe in the first round, because you've already had the preseason, you just want to get cracking, and by round 2 you're already a round behind everybody else. But this is like you get one game under your belt only to immediately have to go on the bye. So I'm not a huge fan of the bye at second. It is nice to have 2 home games, Highlanders and Crusaders. That'll be crucial in terms of their wanting to keep up with the Crusaders, essentially assuming the Crusaders are going to do what they do. Away to the Chiefs, home to the Hurricanes, and then a bye. 2 tough away games in the South Island, and then a final game to maybe qualify against the Chiefs at home. Like, that one seems like a really nice game on the cards. Like, Hamilton to Auckland's not that far. They usually get a fair few travelling fans. So, like, imagine if the Chiefs and the Blues are both in contention for first or second in that last game. That game will be probably a sellout. It could be a heck of a game. The Chiefs, as I just mentioned, I'm not a huge fan of having the bye in the first round, because when they tackle the Highlanders, although they'll be at home, the Highlanders will have already had one game under their belt, so they will be that much match sharper than the Chiefs. But otherwise, the Highlanders as their first game at home is not a bad way to start. But you better get up to speed quickly, because then you got the Crusaders and the Hurricanes away. There's no easy games, man. What can you say? But then Blues at home, decently plays by, and then maybe it's a good run-in for the finals for them. Highlanders away, Crusaders and Hurricanes at home, followed up, as I mentioned, with that potentially big clash against the Blues at Eden Park to round things off. The Hurricanes one, I think, is maybe my second favourite of all of them. They start with the Blues at home, which is usually, apart from this year, a pretty happy hunting ground for them. Crusaders away, though, is tough. The bye third. I mean, you got to get the bye within the first 4 rounds, right? So it's got to come in somewhere, first 5 rounds. But yeah, I think at least they get the 2 games under their belt. The first one is at home. Chiefs at home, Highlanders, Blues away. I don't mind that one. Final game at home against the Highlanders. You'd back the Hurricanes 6 months out from the competition to get a win over the Highlanders at home to, again, potentially put them in some kind of playoffs position. Final. So I don't think that one's too bad. this may be just a case of envying everything Crusaders, but I still reckon the Crusaders have got the best run. The only thing I don't really like for them is that they start away to the Highlanders. The Highlanders always want to give them a good run down there in Dunedin. So that's, like, if that's any other team, I think that's maybe preferable. But the fact that it's their local rival, the Highlanders, makes it a bit tougher. Then Hurricanes, Chiefs at home, Blues away. Bye, I think that's the best spot to have the bye. You've had 4 games on the trot. You've got your match sharpness. Maybe you actually are in the mood for a wee rest. You get that. Highlanders at home, Hurricanes, Chiefs away, and then that final game against the Blues at home. And then this bye, assuming the Crusaders are going to be first or second, which you know they are, they get a week off before the finals the week after. So that just seems too perfectly placed, man. The Crusaders have done it again. They've won the schedule. Surely they have. That's what I reckon. Call me out if that's just being envious of the Crusaders, but I reckon that looks the best of the lot. Highlanders, Crusaders at home, Chiefs, Blues away. Bye is decently placed. Hurricane, I think the tail end of their season is definitely preferable. First 4 rounds, you've only had 1 game at home. I suppose that's also true for the Chiefs, but everyone else has had at least 2. Finish up with the Hurricanes away, which will be tough. But they got Tony Brown as coach, so you never know what they're going to do. But yeah, that is the fixtures list for next year. What do you guys reckon about the addition of a final? I think that's a good move. They didn't go with Super Rugby's AU's idea of having a semi-final and a final, which I think probably works because otherwise you get more teams qualifying for the knockout stages than don't. So I think straight to a final's fine. It's going to mean no dead rubber in this last week. It'll mean there's still something to play for, I'm sure, for at least probably 2 of the teams. I can't imagine by that last round there's not, like, I can't imagine it's just 2 teams who've already kind of secured their finals berths. Maybe one will be top. If it's anyone, it's probably going to be the Crusaders. Maybe they've secured first, but there still should be at least 2 teams in the hunt for second, I would imagine. But anyway, it's still a long way away. As I mentioned, a few afternoon games, mostly 7:05. Should be good times. Super Rugby Aotearoa was a pretty successful product this year. I keep wanting to say last year. Hopefully it's a bit more of the same. The attendance has kind of fluctuated. Some games did really well. Like I remember going to the opening game against the Canes at Eden Park, and it was chock-a-block, like a test match. And then it was only a few weeks later that it was kind of not even half full against the Highlanders. So, yeah, let's hope people get back into it. February next year. Doesn't sound that so far away, man, seeing as we're already in November. I was saying 6 months less than that. Crazy. But anyway, yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. Who do you reckon's got the best? Who do you reckon's got the worst? And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.